How are you guys doing? Today is Friday, December 31st, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, as we go into the 2022 calendar year, I'm going to go through all of the baseball players that I have labeled as elite for the 2022 calendar year, meaning that when their birthday comes in this calendar year, I will do a full-on profile, going into the micro, looking into their stats and accolades through every single year, looking at the numbers, and I'm going to take a step back and look at the macro and look at all of the accomplishments and awards and trophies that they were able to win, individual and team accomplishments as well. And of course, going into the season, knowing I can't go into one of these episodes without, of course, pointing out the fact that baseball is a very global sport. People around the world play it all the time. And the MLB is the top league in baseball in the world. People come from around the world to come to the MLB to play against the best competition in America. And I guess going off of that, I really go into these players just to give a sense of how impressive it is to not only make the MLB, not only make your roster, not only be the let alone starter on your team, but to establish yourself as one of the best baseball players in the world of hundreds of thousands and very possibly millions of baseball players. So first, I'm going to take this time to start with the National League, starting with the defending World Series champs, Atlanta Braves. As of right now, I have 3 players representing the Atlanta Braves on this list. I have their first baseman, Freddie Freeman, who turns 33 this year. Not to mention as well that Ozzie Albies, their second baseman, who is also a first team, who also made the All-MLB team, and also was able to win a Silver Slugger at the position after he had 100 runs and 100 RBIs. And of course, not to mention that Freddie Freeman won the 2020 MVP and would still go on to, I believe, lead the National Leagues in runs this year. And then the third player representing the Atlanta Braves might even be a better baseball player than those other two. Ronaldo Cunha Jr. turns 25 in December, even though he missed the second half of the last MLB season. Ronaldo Cunha Jr., when he's on, is most definitely on. Considering he's already at 100 home runs, it's very possible that this man has a lot of dominant baseball left ahead of him, just even knowing that fact. And it'll be very interesting to see what he looks like as soon as he comes back for this team. Staying within the division, the only player representing the Nationals is Juan Soto, the player that Ronald Acuna beat out for the Rookie of the Year and I want to say in 2018. The World Series champ turns 24 in October, so he's going to be 23 this entire baseball season. Not to mention that he and Bryce Harper, I believe, are the only 2 players to finish with a batting average over 300, an on-base percentage over 400, a slugging percentage over 600, and an OPS, or on-base plus slugging, of over 1,000. Because if you have over 400 in one and 600 in the other, you're going to have an over 1,000 OPS. But of course, I will point that out. So that's, of course, how the Nationals fared. Taking a look at the Phillies, the only player representing the Philadelphia Phillies is Bryce Harper. The reigning MVP of the National League turns 30 this season in October, so he'll be playing this next full season as a 29-year-old. So, of course, you have that to look out for. And then, of course, looking up in New York in the National League East, they're starting with their pitchers. They have Jacob Degrom and Max Scherzer, who might go down as 2 of the best pitchers of all, or at least 2 of the best pitchers of all time, at least in this era, in the 21st century. Jacob Degrom, the multi-Cy Young winner, specifically in the National League, turns 34 this season in June. He'll be turn 34 in the middle of the season. And then, of course, Max Scherzer, who just joined the team, will turn 38 in July. That'll be in the middle of the season as well. Scherzer has won a Cy Young in the American League and the National League. I don't know if he's the only player to do that, but as far as I know, to the best of my knowledge, he's the only player that has won the Cy Young Award in the American League and National League. And of course, he's still pitching at an incredible level, as he, I believe, was in the top 5 in ERA and strikeouts last year, as he started with the Nationals, ended with the Dodgers, and just missed out on the World Series by losing to the Braves. And looking at their infield, their first baseman, Pete Alonso, who set the National League home run records when he was a rookie. He set the rookie National League record for home runs in a season. He turns 28 in December, so he'll be playing this entire season as a 27-year-old. And the Mets shortstop, Francisco Lindor, turns 29 in November. This will be his first season. This will be his second season with the New York Mets after leaving the Cleveland Indians. That's what they were named when he left them. So right now the Mets have 2 elite starting pitchers and they have 2 elite infielders. So that's how the NL East looks. Taking a look at the National League Central, of course, taking a look at where the Cardinals are sitting with this. The Cardinals have 2 elite infielders, sitting at first base. Paul Goldschmidt, the multiple-time Cy Young, or not the multiple-time Silver Slugger winner at the first base position, turns 35 on my birthday on September 10th. And the thing about Paul Goldschmidt, at least for my birthday, is like I don't work on my birthday. I'll at least do it like after. I'll make it part of the. I'll do it like the day after, but I won't post it the day of. And then of course, sitting at third base, their third baseman, who's won the Gold Glove at the position every single year that he's been there, turns 31, as he is quite possibly putting on one of the greatest runs that a third baseman has ever had in a career in baseball history. Taking a look at the players repping Milwaukee, surprisingly, 2 of them are relief pitchers, starting off with, of course, Devin Williams. Devin Williams turns 28 this year in September. He went on to win the relief pitcher of the year, I believe, in the 2020 season that happened to be shortened, and he had a great season this year. Also in their relief pitchers, their closer, Josh Hader, who, of course, before he became a closer, was one of the best setup pitchers in this, or he would go on to, he had a better season arguably this year, and he's been arguably one of the most imposing pitchers, the most intimidating pitchers to ever set foot on a mound. And then, of course, sitting in the outfield is former National League MVP Christian Yelisha out of Los Angeles. He turns 31 this season, as his last couple of seasons have been a little bit under par, but I still have faith that Christian Yelich will bring it back and put everything back together. I do think that going into this, or I guess I'm going to use this to transition to what's going on in the National League West. Starting with the Dodgers and their starting pitchers, of course, they're led by Clayton Kershaw and Walker Buehler. Clayton Kershaw turns 34 this season, he turns 34 this year in March before the season even starts. So this will be his age 34 season. And of course, we all know that Clayton Kershaw is one of the few pitchers that has won the National League MVP ever in history. So of course, and he's still been pitching incredibly well, at least going through last season. And then Walker Buehler is starting to put his name and ascend his way up the pitching rotation. I don't know if this is the season where he becomes the opening day starter, but of course that day is coming very soon. Looking at the Dodgers infield, up there, their second base is being manned by Trey Turner, who went on to, I believe, lead the MLB in hits last year. He either had the hits title or the batting average round, but either way, he finished with a lot of hits, and the Dodgers are definitely advantaged by having him on their team. Transitioning to the outfield, the players representing the LA Dodgers are Mookie Betts and Cody Bellinger, both players that have won MVPs within the past 3-4 seasons. Mookie Betts was, of course, one of the better Red Sox. He was one of the best players in the league, of course, when he was in the American League on the Red Sox. Signed a $300 million deal to play with the LA Dodgers, a long-term deal, and ever since he's been on the Dodgers, he's helped them win a World Series, and of course, he's still continued to be one of the better offensive and defensive outfielders in the game. I don't think there are many players you can really count on just off the top of your head that are just better overall than Mookie Betts. And I'd even say he's the best Dodger out of everyone I named. And not to mention Cody Bellinger is, I want to say, 2 seasons off. Yeah, he's 2 seasons away from winning the National League MVP. So, of course, that gives you a sense of how fresh and how in his prime he is, because he won his MVP a couple of years ago, and just now Cody Bellinger is now officially entering his or I guess he's going to turn 27 in the middle of the season, so I mean he's still in prime age, so I wouldn't put anything past him this season. Looking at what's going on in San Francisco, the lone player representing San Francisco was Kris Bryant, who joined them in the middle of the season. As Kris Bryant is a former MVP, and not only did he win the MVP that year, he helped the Chicago Cubs win their first World Series in over a year. So of course that and Kris Bryant is still showing that he's the same, that he's really close to that same player now. Staying within California, but going south of LA, looking at what's going on in San Diego. Starting at the pitching rotation, they have Yu Darvish, who, of course, got here from Japan, and ever since he's gotten to the MLB from Japan, has established himself as one of the better pitchers in baseball. He had an incredible season with Chicago before he joined the San Diego Padres, and he's had a pretty impressive last year. And sitting alongside him is Blake Snell, who is now entering his second season with the San Diego Padres. He won a Cy Young with the Tampa Bay Rays not that long ago, and even this last season, he still put some incredible games together. In their infield, of course, their duo sitting right next to each other, starting at shortstop, they're sitting with Fernando Tatis. As Fernando Tatis turns 23 on the 3rd. And just to get a sense, Fernando Tatis led the National League in home runs last year, tied with Bryce Harper, with significantly less games played. And the fact that he only turns 23 he turns 23 so soon, it hints at the fact that we're going to see Fernando Tatis and Acuna, and we're going to see even players like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Wander Franco in the league for a very long time. And then, of course, sitting alongside him is Manny Machado, the Padres' third baseman, who will eventually turn 30 in July. And of course, not to mention that Manny Machado is a player that has consistently been on like MVP voting boards, just to give a sense of how dominant he really can be. Taking a look at the players out in the Mile High City, the only player representing the Colorado Rockies is their shortstop, Trevor Story, who set the MLB on fire when he first debuted, hitting a crazy amount of home runs. Not to mention that he's incredible on defense, but he still is the power bat that the Rockies are relying on, especially at this point. Right before I segue into from the National League to the American League, taking a look at the players that are MLB free agents going into this year. I'm going to take this start with Nick Castellanos. Following his amazing season with the Cincinnati Reds, in which he would go on to be named to the All-MLB team in the outfield. I have no idea as to where he's going to be playing, but as soon as he makes a team, he will go on to turn 30 this season. The other player that was a free agent was Freddie Freeman. I actually did end up getting him mixed up with Mike Soroka on the Braves, as Soroka is actually the fourth player for the Braves. He's the only pitcher that they had, and of course he's coming off of a season in which he didn't play this last full season, and then he was injured the season before that. But not to mention that he was the player that finished runner-up in Rookie of the Year voting to Pete Alonso, and Pete Alonso won. And then in his very first season, he would put together a very solid all-star campaign that would cement him as what looks like the Braves ace for the foreseeable future. And not to mention that the Braves did win the World Series without Mike Soroka, arguably their best pitcher, and Ronaldo Cunha, arguably their best hitter, just to give a sense of. Just to mention the Braves one more time before I transition to the American League for a second, as Ozzie Albies, Mike Soroka, and Ronald Acuna are the three players representing the Braves that are for sure on the Braves, as Freddie Freeman has not made his decision yet. Now taking a look at the teams that are representing the American League, starting with the reigning American League champs. The Astros, starting with their pitching, are represented by Justin Verlander, who's won multiple Cy Youngs in the American League for two different teams, by the way, and still pitching incredibly well. Moving to the Astros infield, or before I get there, their designated hitter, Yordan Alvarez, is a new addition as he turns 25 during the season. And of course, he's been an amazing power bat for them as soon as he's gotten there. Tuning to their first baseman, Yuli Guriel turns 38 in June. He went on to finish with the American League batting title this past season, as every single year he's played in the league, he's had an incredible amount of hits, and not to consider that he did dominate Cuban baseball before eventually transitioning to the MLB to really dominate, at least as a contact hitter. Moving around the infield, their second baseman, Jose Altuve, is of course a player that in a 4-season stretch had 200 hits in every single one of those games. That was a second ago, but at the same time, Jose Altuve is still the incredible contact hitter, and he's even gotten better as a power hitter over the past few years as well. But definitely Jose Altuve is a world-class player. Moving down the line, their shortstop, Carlos Correa, was named the Wilson Defensive Player of the Year, the best defensive player in baseball. Not to mention that he's won a World Series and is actually a very clutch hitter when it comes to playoff games especially. Moving down their infield, as their entire infield is elite, their third baseman, Alex Bregman, also on this list, not to mention that he was the player who had the game-winning hit against the Dodgers that would go on to win them the series. Carlos Correa turns 28 towards the end of the MLB season. And then those are the players that, of course, represent the Astros. Staying within the AL West, the lone player representing the Oakland Athletics is Matt Chapman. Their third baseman, who's consistently been regarded as one of the better defensive third basemen in baseball outside of Nolan Arenado, turns 29 towards the beginning of this season. So it'll be very interesting to see what he does with this team. I'm looking at the players representing the Angels, looking at their pitchers. Of course, Shohei Ohtani, after being named by many magazines, many sports media sites as the athlete of the year, the most influential for what he was able to do he was able to make the All-Star as a starting pitcher and a designated hitter. He would go on to finish with 100 RBIs along with 40 plus home runs, as Shohei Ohtani this is the first time that I've added Shohei Ohtani to this list. He turns 28 in July. Moving to the players in their infield, Anthony Rendon, their third baseman, who was a very responsible part of the Washington Nationals winning the World Series in 2019. He's had a bit of a rough patch with the LA Angels, and he hasn't just been. It'll be a second before he kind of gets his rhythm, but I still think Anthony Rendon is most definitely that player because he was on the Nationals. And then, of course, moving to the outfield, you have arguably the best player in baseball, Mike Trout, who for a majority of his career has either been an MVP or a runner-up or definitely a top 5 player, despite the Angels only making the playoffs one time in his career. Mike Trout turns 31 in August. So that's the Angels. Taking a look at the players representing the Mariners, the only player representing the Mariners is Robbie Ray, who they just signed after Robbie Ray, I believe, led the American League in innings pitched, strikeouts, and I want to say ERA. I think he had the Triple Crown in the American League, as he had an incredible season with a Toronto Blue Jays team that didn't even make the playoffs. But of course, he's going to make a lot of Mariners fans incredibly happy. Transitioning to the Texas Rangers, there are 2 players representing the team, and they just signed them. Their second baseman, Marcus Semien, just got there from the Toronto Blue Jays after his season where he posted about 45 home runs. I think he hit the most home runs in a season that a second baseman has ever hit, and he turns 32 in September this year. And of course, sitting at shortstop, their newest addition from the LA Dodgers is now Corey Seager. Corey Seager turns 28 in April this year, as he's been a very vital part of the Dodgers dominating the National League West since he's been in the league. Not to mention that he won the Rookie of the Year in his very first full season with the Dodgers, and he's been a very reliant contributor really ever since. Taking a look at the players representing the American League Central, of course, starting with the AL Central champs, the Chicago White Sox, of course, being led by starting with the pitchers, they have 2 of the best closers in all of baseball, actually. They have Liam Hendricks, and they have Craig Kimbrell, who was originally on the Chicago Cubs. Kimbrell has the better longevity stats because when he came in, he was one of the more dominant pitchers, and now he's still incredible as a relief pitcher. But as of right now, the White Sox they've designated Liam Hendricks the official closer, as he turned 33 this year. In their infield, Jose Abreu, who was the American League MVP in 2020, I believe led the American League in RBIs this year as well. He turns 35 this season, he turns 35 at the end of the month of January. And then, of course, the White Sox shortstop, Tim Anderson, who would go on who was the MVP of the Field of Dreams game, would go on to, he turns 29 in the middle of this season, so he's still in the prime of his career. Not to mention that he does hit incredibly for average. Not to mention that he's incredible defensively, and I would say that he's a really solid leader, role model for the White Sox to really kind of gather around. He really does have that energy, and I will give that to Tim Anderson. Looking at the players representing the newly named Cleveland Guardians, their starting pitcher, Shane Bieber, who won the Triple Crown, the American League Triple Crown in the 2020 season. He turns 27 this year, as he is still figuring out his superpowers at this point. His last season wasn't his best, but of course he will rebound and have I think is going to rebound and have quite a season. And then moving to their only batter that I considered elite, their third baseman Jose Ramirez, who's been a constant in the MVP conversation for the last half decade. One of the more overlooked elite players in all of baseball, but I think Jose Ramirez most definitely deserves his credit. Looking at the Kansas City Royals, they're led by their second baseman, Whit Merrifield. Whit Merrifield, incredible contact hitter, gets a lot of hits over the course of a season. Not to mention that he also steals bases, and he steals bases too, and just with that athleticism that does actually make him he is a well above average defender at the position as well. And then sitting at catcher is Salvador Perez, who tied with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. in home runs for the year, as Salvador Perez also was able to put up 120 RBIs. So Salvador Perez is, of course, coming off of a great season. Not to mention that he's one of the biggest reasons that Kansas City was able to win the World Series within the last decade as well. So, of course, Salvador Perez most definitely gets his credit for what he's done to this organization. Looking at the Detroit players, the lone player representing the Detroit Tigers is Javier Baez. This is going to be his very first season on the team since he just signed with the Tigers. His last season was played in New York. Javi Baez turns 30 in December, so this entire next season will be his age 29 season. So that's the American League Central. Moving now to the American League East, which was actually won by the Tampa Bay Rays. I have three players representing the Tampa Bay Rays, starting with their designated hitter, Nelson Cruz. Nelson Cruz, of course, had yet another great season for contact and power as he got traded by the Twins right before the Rays made it into the playoffs. Moving to their infield, their newest shortstop, Wander Franco, is no longer a prospect. Last year, I had him on here as an MLB prospect. He finally got moved up, and he would go on to have I think he had the longest active hit streak in the MLB this year, and he turns 21 right before this next season starts. So this next season will be his age 21 season. Last but not least is this season's MLB American League Rookie of the Year, Randy Arozarena, who also has the American League record, or has the MLB record for hits in a playoffs, like an entire playoffs, for what he did in 2020. So, of course, Randy Arozarena at 26, with not that many games under his belt, has already accomplished some superhuman feats that warrants him being on this list as well. Taking a look at the team that finished, I believe, second in the American League East, go into the New York Yankees. They're led by their starting pitcher, Garrett Cole. He turns 31. He's their ace, I believe. He has a $300 million contract with the team. The closer, Aroldis Chapman, turns 34 today. He was in this most recent MLB All-Star. He was the player that was one of the more tenured players at the All-Star game, as he's a 7-time All-Star. Not to mention that he did win the World Series with the Chicago Cubs in 2016. Looking at the players that, of course, aren't pitchers, moving to their infield, before I get to their infield, their designated hitter, Giancarlo Stanton, who was the National League MVP when he hit 60 home runs in, 2017. He turns 33 in November, so this entire next season will be his age 32 season. Moving to the infield, their second baseman, DJ LeMahieu, was one of the few players that's actually won, I think he's the only player that's won the batting crown in the American League and the National League in one career. So, and against two completely different sets of pitchers, by the way. And then alongside LeMahieu, they have Gleyber Torres, who's trying to fill in Derek Jeter's shoes at the shortstop position. Already a 2-time All-Star. He turns 26 in December of 2022. Also, taking a look at the outfielder, the only outfielder representing the New York Yankees is, of course, Aaron Judge. After Aaron Judge had a 99 RBI season this last year, he was the Yankees, I would argue, their most important hitter, one of the most important facets, one of the more important reasons that the Yankees actually made it to the playoffs. And now looking at their division rival, the Red Sox are led by their starting pitcher, Chris Sale, the former World Series champion, 7-time All-Star, multiple-time strikeout leader, holds MLB records for the fastest to 2,000 strikeouts. He has the best career strikeout to walk ratio. He's also tied with Sandy Koufax and Max Scherzer with the most immaculate innings pitched, as he's pitched 3 of them. He also holds the MLB record for 1.23 career strikeouts per innings pitched. So yes, Chris Sale is an elite pitcher. Looking at their hitters, starting with their designated hitter, JD Martinez, their designated hitter turns 35 this year in the middle of their season, as JD Martinez put up an incredible RBIs season this season as well. Moving to their infield duo, Xander Bogaerts, who's making it to the first on this list for the first time, turns 30 after his amazing season, and Rafael Devers, after his amazing season, is of course going to finish, or he's going to turn 26 this year in October. So that is how the Red Sox are shaping up. Looking at the teams up north of the border to finish this off, because there are no Baltimore Orioles, the lone starting pitcher left on the Blue Jays is Xinjin Ryu, now that Robbie Ray is on the Mariners. Xinjin Ryu was, of course, a Korean pitching legend before making it to the MLB, and since he's been in the MLB, has been a very formidable pitcher. Even this last year with Toronto, he was a big part of the reason they finished with 90 wins, despite them not making it. And then going to their infielders, their duo, you have Vladimir Guerrero Jr., their 22-year-old first baseman, who almost won the MLB MVP this year. He tied with Salvador Perez for the most home runs in the in the league. And then alongside him in the infield is Beau Bashette, their 23-year-old, who's going to turn 24 before this upcoming season. And last season, Beau Bashette would go on to finish second in the entire MLB, and he had 2nd in the entire MLB in hits behind Trey Turner. Beau Bashette would go on to hold the American League hits title, as they went on to not even make the playoffs this year. But of course, when you take a step back and look at it, these are all of the players that I've listed as elite for the 2022 year. And as I've said earlier, as we go through their birthdays, I'm going to drop a new profile on their birthday, even updated from last year. And of course, until then, if you're looking for any of these players, if I've done a profile on them last year, they should be up on this channel. But with that said, I want to thank everyone once again for listening to all 27 minutes of this piece. I really do hope all is well, and I can't wait to see what this 2022 season of baseball brings, especially with all these elite players in baseball spread out amongst its 30 teams. Thanks for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another episode tomorrow. Peace out.